want to share about how I transferred from community college to UC Berkeley. So my story might be a little bit different from other people's. I feel like when you Google this or you go on YouTube to find a video like this, you hear about the person who did all the honors classes and had AP scores and that they graduated with a 4.0. Let me just tell you that's not my story, and if you're anything like me, feel free to listen and figure out how you can do it. I graduated from high school with a 2.0. I did not do very well in high school, partly because I grew up really low income and I went to a high school that didn't really care about students, and we didn't really have a lot of AP classes or like clubs or like interesting stuff for students to get involved with. I feel like certainly some students still did well despite that, but for me that was not motivating for me at all. Like if I was going to go to college, I had to pay for it myself because my parents did not have money to help me. I worked 2 jobs my senior year of high school and I passed by the skin of my teeth. So then I decided to go to community college while I was still working. And I didn't really know like what I needed to do to transfer back then. I was first generation college student. I didn't really know how to navigate college. So I just started. I took like a placement test to get me into the class I needed to get into. So I took one for math and one for English. So you had to take like a reading and a writing course, like basic reading and writing course. But that filled up right away. So I did not take that my first quarter. I got my placement test back and I scored to Algebra 1. Yeah. So I had to take Algebra 1 and then I just took some classes that were fun because I couldn't take those English classes. And a lot of the times the prereq was like, take this English class before you get into this class. But I would just talk to the professor and be like, I couldn't get into that English class, it filled up. So I took Women's Studies 8, which is like Women's History or something like that. And then I took, no, Women's Studies 8. I took 2 Women's Studies classes, but I can't tell you exactly what they were. One was like Women's History and then one was like Women of Color in the USA, and those were like really interesting to me because I did like politics, I did like learning about history that actually was like interesting to me and like was stuff that I couldn't learn in high school. So I started to get like really motivated to do well in community college just by finding information that actually pertained to my life and actually felt educational and interesting to me. So I started taking classes that were fun for me, but also taking like 1 or 2 classes that I needed to graduate, right? Or to do IGETC or whatever. And at that time, I wasn't that focused on doing IGETC. I was thinking maybe, or I don't know if you know what IGETC is. I'll just share that. IGETC is like basically your requirements to transfer to a UC. There's a different one for state schools and there's a different one for UC. So IGETC is the one for UCs. I'm sure you know that if you're interested in transferring or if you've been going through this, but if you're not, then you wouldn't know that information. You're just like, what is that acronym? So I was just taking some classes that I liked and I was taking some classes that I had to take to get somewhere eventually. But I really, at the time, I couldn't see myself in higher education. I was just like, yeah, I'm working part-time and I'm taking some classes at community college. Like, woohoo, that's fun, that's cool, that's what everyone's doing, right? So I thought it was really cool that I was like doing that, but I also just didn't know how I was gonna get to where I wanted to be, and I didn't even know if higher education was like obtainable for me at the time because it all felt very like intimidating, you know. Still feels very intimidating if I'm being honest. So then after a while, like after that year, I realized I wasn't really going to be able to afford to keep going to school, and I was like, I kind of really like going to school and I'm kind of good at this actually. How am I going to be able to afford this if I don't have financial aid? And at the time, so I didn't have financial aid and I wasn't sure if I was getting BOG waiver at the time because my mom got married and then so like the finances mixed at that time, so the tax returns were different, so I lost my financial aid for a year. That's a whole nother story, but basically I lost my financial aid that year and I was like, I can't afford to be doing this and going to school going to work part-time, going to school part-time. I can't afford it. So I decided to take an internship with Public Allies And at the end of the internship, you get $5,000, but I had to take a year off to do the internship to get some money to go back to school. But that actually ended up helping me later when I applied for UCs. I had some internship experience to talk about in my applications as well, so that actually ended up working out, even though I did not love having that internship. It was not very fun, and I really did not like my supervisor, and that was actually a really hard year for me, but I made it through. I got my $5,000 and I was able to afford to go back to school. And then by that time, I actually did qualify for BOG waiver. I don't think I qualified for financial aid for the majority of the time that I went to community college after that, but I did qualify for BOG waiver, which makes your tuition a lot less than what it would be. It makes it like $50 or something, where it would have been like $600 a quarter, which is still really cheap considering at university it's way more than that. So start saving money if you really want to transfer, because it's gonna get expensive quick. But going to community college definitely saves you money. So I took a year off, I did the internship, I came back, and I was still really nervous about how am I gonna transfer? How am I gonna get through this? I didn't even know what major I wanted to have, and I didn't, I would look on assist.org and be like, oh, I kinda wanna go for this, I kinda wanna go for this, but I never really had a clear path. And assist.org is essentially a website that you should be using if you wanna transfer. Basically, it shares all the classes that you need to take on top of iGETC to get into the universities that you want to get into. But at the time, I was just thinking, oh, maybe I'll transfer to San Jose State or one of the state schools, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time, and I was really intimidated at the thought of transferring. Another thing I want to share is apply for anything that can help you. If your school has EOP or EOPS or any kind of service for students that you qualify for, apply for it, because it really helped me when I was able to get into EOPS. I was able to get a counselor that met with me every single time. I was able to get free printing services, help for, you could even get help with your applications for a transfer. They let you know about events that are going on that could help you, job fairs and stuff like that. So it's really important to get involved with stuff like that, because you will be more informed than people who aren't. And also, if you go to the counseling office just to talk about your goals or how you're going to get to where you need to be, oftentimes the counseling office, or at my community college, the counseling office would have a different person every time. So you'd go in and you'd want to tell somebody oh, I want to do this, this, and this, but that person doesn't really know you or know your transcript well. And the next time that you come in to talk to another person about that same goal, you have to say everything again, and they might have different advice for you. So I think it's really important to be seeing the same counselor over and over again. It really does help, and I had such a helpful counselor. When I came back and I finally was able to get into EOPS, that's when the ball started rolling. That's when I started to figure out what I needed to do, and that's how I got a counselor who actually cared about me and gave me advice that was meaningful. So basically, through EOPS, they helped me narrow down what my interests were by looking at my transcript and saying hey, you really like women's studies, you really like sociology, you really like psych, and you really like ethnic studies. So here's 4 things that you could go into, and here's the benefits of each one a little bit. And she gave me some things to think about. So then I was finally able to choose a major, and I decided to choose psychology. She also told me that I was UC eligible when no one else had told me that. I was thinking, oh, I'm just gonna go to a state school, or I'm not really sure what I'm gonna transfer to yet. But my counselor was hey, you could totally go to UC. Why are you just saying you wanna go here, here, here? Maybe you could apply to here, but also apply to the UC schools. So that was really awesome to be able to broaden my horizons that way, because this is my first time navigating college, and I don't really have anyone to confide in. I don't have anyone to help me through that process, but I finally had this counselor who was able to help me in that way and tell me hey, you should apply for UCs. You're totally eligible, and you're totally able to do that. And that is something I never really heard before, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do. So next comes actually getting through all those classes and applying for transfer. I think you should start thinking about applying for transfer like a year before you're actually ready to transfer. Like a year before, here are some steps that I think that you should take. Number one, you should be involved in some kind of clubs or organizations or an internship of some kind that you're going to be able to write about on your applications. And I think these should pertain to the major that you're interested in or something that has to do with your values. For example, for me, I was part of the psychology club, and I would just like go to meetings, and I got to know the people who were there a lot. And it was like also really nice going there because you saw the same faces like every few weeks, and you were able to make friends, and you were able to like find more opportunities that way. And also the psych professors would often come to like give presentations, so you get to know your psych professors really well as well. So that's like a really nice benefit of being involved on campus, is you get to know people who maybe you wouldn't have gotten to know before, or maybe they could like write you a letter of rec later in life. So it's really important to be involved on campus, and I think you should really be thinking about that ahead of time before it's like nearly time to apply. Another thing is, if you do really well in a class, I think that you should ask the professor to TA for them. If they tend to have TAs or like helpers or people that help them grade or proctor exams or anything like that, ask your professors if you can help them, because that's a good way to get to know them. That's a good way to like learn more as well, because when I was TAing, I was also like helping students who were struggling. Like I was like tutoring, and like I had like my own like little office hour time, so that helped me to learn the material better so that I could teach it to the person who's having a hard time. So ask to be a TA. That's also an amazing thing to put on your application. I wrote about my TA experience. I TA'd for the chair of psychology, and I TA'd for her Psych 1 class and biological psych class for 2 quarters. So that was something that I was able to write about on my application, and I think also really benefited my life as well, because I felt like I learned the material like better than I would have, you know? So another thing is there's also jobs on campus, and a lot of the times those are good things to write about on your applications too. So if there's like, I know on my community college they had a math tutoring center, I think they had a science tutoring center, and I think they had a reading and writing tutoring center as well. So if you are really good at any of those subjects, you can always apply to do that, and that looks really good on your application as well. Another thing is applications open. I think they open in the summer, and I really can't stress this enough, but get started early. Like through EOPS, there was like tutorial on how to write your essays, your personal insight questions, and I believe there's like 5 or 6, and you have to choose 4, I think it is. I applied kind of a while ago, but yeah, so you're gonna have to write a lot of essays, but they're short. They're only like 350 words, so you kind of have to like express yourself and show your values in 350 words or less, and it needs to be like to the point. So I was able to go to like a tutorial for that, and that was really helpful for me because I started in July and they were due in November, so I was able to kind of like edit them how I wanted, and I had a lot of time to like think about things to write about. So if you can start early, I definitely stress starting early is super helpful, and it was really helpful for me. If your community college offers it, I think you should look into tagging. So basically what a tag is, it stands for transfer agreement, application agreement, transfer, like that. So basically you can tag to a UC. Not all the UCs offer it. I don't think Berkeley has a tag, and I don't think UCLA has a tag, but the other UCs usually have a tag agreement. Your counselor about that. So basically what you do is you're going to apply in the summer. I think it's due in September, and you just click tag on the UC page. You're going to tag to one of the universities. Basically what you're saying when you tag is you are going to follow IGETC, and you're going to take the classes that that university requires to get in. So I tagged to Davis, and basically all I needed to do was follow IGETC, take a few more psych classes, and like one more science class, and I was like guaranteed acceptance to Davis. But when you tag, you still need to apply to the school that you tag to, or else your tag is like null and void. So make sure that you tag if you have time to tag, and you apply to the school that you tag to as well. Because if you don't, then it doesn't even count. So, and I know a few people who did that, like they lost their tag because they didn't actually apply there and they didn't know the information. So I'm letting you know now. Another thing is if you tag, that's essentially your safety school. So you're not going to need to apply to like other schools if you don't want to. If you don't want to apply to state schools, you don't have to do that because you already have your safety school already set up. And when I tagged to Davis, they got back to me like right away. Like after 2 weeks, I already knew if I was in. So that was really helpful to know like, hey, I'm in Davis, and now I just need to apply to other schools that I want to get into. And at the end of the day, I still have this position if I want it, you know? So that's really nice to know. I don't know if the other schools get back to you as quick, but I know Davis gets back to you really, really quick. And it was nice to know that I was like in somewhere already. Another thing about the application is you have to add every single grade that you've ever gotten at that community college or other community college into that application. So it takes a really long time. Like for me, I think I was in community college for like 3 years. So I had so many grades to enter, even stuff that didn't even, like that weren't relevant to what I was transferring for. I still have to enter all those grades. So it takes a really long time. So I can't stress it enough. Like, start applying early, okay? If you have time, apply early. Oh, another thing. So, you know how everybody thinks that when you transfer, if you want to get into Berkeley, if you want to get into UCLA, you have to have a 4.0. That's not entirely true. So, something I really want to tell you is that on the website for the application, it actually says the minimum requirement is 3.3 GPA, I believe. So if you have anything higher than a 3.3, or if you have a 3.3, I think that you should apply to a UC or a few UCs, because you never know who's going to accept you. Like if you have really good essays, if you have community service, if you have clubs, if you have internships, that GPA can be a little bit lower. And anything like that because, I only have a 3.4, I only have a 3.5, so I'm not going to get into that school. That's not true. Internships, and I had club memberships, and I was TAing for the chair of the department. So as long as you are kind of like a well-rounded student, they're going to want you. That they have, and you're going to have something interesting about you that's going to get you your foot into the door. So I just think there's a lot to think about. Don't be like, oh, I can't get in because I don't have a 4.0. Like, you can, and you probably will. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below.